Hello, everyone. My name is Tahirih Vejdani. I'm a National Councillor for the Ontario region. I'm pleased to welcome you today to our first ever Clause and Effect, a new initiative we've created to help members gain a better understanding of our agreements and policies. For this inaugural edition, we've chosen a pretty hot topic for a lot of us. This is understudy work. We're going to get started shortly, and while we're waiting for few people to enter, please feel free to drop a couple words into the chat that describe maybe how you're doing today, what's on your mind. Maybe it's your day off, or maybe it's your day different. A practice that our committees have adopted is sharing a thought of gratitude, which sets a supportive tone and open environment for the work we're about to do. So please feel free to share if you would like to. I hear feedback is continuing. Let me just figure out sound on this end. Apologies, folks, if you're still getting some feedback, but the headphones should likely resolve that. So I'm just going to change a setting or two, and hopefully that resolves on your end. I'm going to continue with our statement of affirmation and land acknowledgement. Equity embraces an open and inclusive environment and encourages respectful behavior that affirms the dignity of all individuals. Equity further recognizes our shared responsibility for vigilance in creating and maintaining this environment. Equity's main office is located in Toronto on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 and the Williams Treaties. Equity recognizes a shared history with Indigenous, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people in Canada. In honor of those who have gone before us, Equity commits to working toward understanding and actionable practices of reconciliation. Now, I am pleased to welcome our two presenters for today. We have Margaret Thompson. Margaret has served as the Business Representative Manager for the Theatre Agreements at Equity for 7 years, negotiating the CTA, the ITA, Stratford Festival Addendum, and Second City Agreement. A professional negotiator and arts manager with more than 15 years of experience, Margaret has supported artists as a casting director, film and theater producer, and music festival manager. She holds an MA in Performance Studies from the Central School of Speech and Drama from London, UK, and continuing education certificates in law in entertainment law. Jennifer Riedle is Equity's Senior Business Representative for the Western Office. She's handled CTA and ITA engagements for the Western region since 2009. Prior to working for Equity, she worked in stage management, company management, and general management for opera, theatre, and musical theatre. Jennifer is a graduate of the National Theatre School of Canada. Oh, love seeing all the messages in the chat. Please keep them coming, everyone. Okay, so before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. If you have a question about something during the presentation, you can drop it into the Q&A and I will try to bring that into the conversation. Or you can save it for the end, but we'll try to tackle any unanswered questions. Feel free to use the chat to share resources and ideas with your colleagues. And a reminder that this session is being recorded to be shared later on Equity's YouTube channel. And now I would like to turn things over to Margaret and Jen.
Thanks so much, Tahirih. And just a quick nod to our not so new executive director, Alex Levine, who's joining from the office in Toronto as well today. So thank you all for coming. It's so amazing to see that so many people have joined this call and are really interested in our little book club, which is going to be centered on various agreements that Equity negotiates. Many of you also received our recent survey about understudies. We had a huge response rate to that survey, which closed this past Sunday. And we're going to be compiling all of those thoughts and contributions from that survey to put into a matrix that Jen and I keep for CTA negotiations so that we can propose any changes that you folks may want to see in terms of these understudy conditions in the CTA and, of course, the ITA when it comes to bargain that agreement next year. So January 2027 will be around the time that we're starting that. So that's just sort of also a little reminder that this session is about what currently exists in the CTA. If you have a burning change that you want to see implemented, I'd really love for you to email that to agreements@caea.com, or you can email it to me directly, and then we'll add it into the matrix for proposed changes. And when we form our bargaining committee this fall, we review all of those suggestions that we receive over the term of the agreement from our members and decide, what makes good sense to put forward for a proposed change to the agreement. But this session today is really about understanding what we currently have. So to start us off, I'm going to ask Randy to start sharing a sweet little PowerPoint presentation that we're going to go through together, but please feel free to keep adding those questions, and Tahirih will throw them out to us as available. So as we said, this is our first clause and effect session, and we're going to be focusing on understudies under the CTA and the ITA. So for starters, I always like to point out how we read the agreement. So agreements have articles, and the definitions are found in Article 18. There's quite a few definitions in the CTA. They are in alphabetical order, and the clause number for understudy is 1817. So when you're trying to find something in agreement, often a really good thing to do, we have a searchable PDF online, is just to throw a word into that search function. You can throw understudy into that search function, and it will take you to every place that understudy is listed in the agreement, and you can find a lot of the information you're looking for yourself. So the CTA definition of understudy isn't the most helpful. It really just refers to all the different types of understudies that exist under the agreement. We're going to look at all of them. We're not going to look at walking cover. It's rarely used, but we are also going to look at bit cover. So moving on to performing understudy, which is probably the clearest one to understand. A performing understudy is simply someone who is an actor in a show, who's got a regular role in that show, but they also have an understudy assignment. And they would perform that understudy assignment when the actor they're covering is not available to perform it. And this is quite different. Being a performing understudy is quite different from being a swing, as an example. So if you want to take us to the swing definition, Randy. So a swing, by definition, is actually a non-performing understudy. So that is somebody who has been contracted solely to understudy in a production. And the interesting thing about swings is that they can cover up to a maximum number of roles, but the majority of those roles or tracks are meant to be ensemble or chorus tracks. So you might wonder, what does majority mean? Well, that typically means more than 50%. So more than 50% of the swings assignments are meant to be ensemble assignments. The definition of swing continues because little interesting tweak to swings is that although they are non-performing understudies, they can be asked to do the work that is typically assigned to an extra. So that is to provide background and atmosphere. They might speak in unison, they might ad lib, they might even be in a very limited song and dance sequence, but that work really is contained to the work of an extra because it can be cut at any point should the swing have to go on in one of the roles that they've been contracted to understudy. Now, this is quite different from a standby. So a standby is also another type of non-performing understudy. And the big difference is that they are contracted to understudy mostly principal tracks. So the majority of the work that a standby is assigned is the coverage of principal tracks. They can have up to 8 tracks, but at least 50% of those must be principal tracks. And unlike a swing, they do not have any sort of regular on-stage performance duties, not even those limited ones that an extra might have, that a swing might be asked to do. A lot of people get standby and swing confused, so let's just take a quick look at a comparison chart. So both are non-performing types of understudies. However, swings primarily cover ensemble roles or tracks, and they may be asked to do that work like an extra would do. So background, atmosphere, crowd scenes, ad-libbing, speaking in unison. Occasionally they're asked to sing off stage, so to bolster the sound of a particular song. A standby primarily covers principal roles and tracks. They are never asked to do any onstage performance. Both types of understudies are paid a premium fee, but the swings must be compensated at least 112% of the minimum fee for an actor from the first day of their engagement. So the minute they start rehearsals, the swing is getting that premium fee. Whereas standbys get a bump in their fee only during performance weeks. And there's a range to what that increase looks like, depending on how many principal roles the standby covers. And it ranges from no bump, if the standby is only covering one principal role, up to 120%. So just a reminder that, your article in the CTA, always at the top there, and then your clause is the sections of the article that relate to that topic. Some things that people often get confused about is, what is a bit cover? So a bit cover is almost exactly what it is described as. You are covering a bit of an ensemble or chorus track. So if somebody plays female ensemble 5, but female ensemble 5 is also the priest in one scene in the play. That one scene, they're playing a distinct character. Maybe they've got a little monologue where they're marrying the couple. And you might be playing female ensemble 4, but they need someone like you to cover that small bit of the track. So that means that you are the bit cover for that track. You're not covering the track in its entirety, but that one small role within the ensemble track, that bit, you are being asked to understudy that small bit. There are limitations on what a bit cover can be, because again, it's supposed to be a small bit. It's supposed to be a section of ensemble role. So you can't have more than 8 exchanges with another character. If there's a monologue, it can't be more than a minute long. And you can really only appear in up to 2 scenes that you would not normally be a part of if you were a performing understudy. So if you've got your regular onstage track, you're this bit cover in 1 or 2 scenes that you're not normally in those scenes, because you wouldn't be able to cover them if you were.
Margaret, can
Yeah.
I ask just a clarifying question?
Yeah.
What constitutes an exchange?
Yes. So an exchange is a funny way of saying you either initiate or respond to dialogue from another character. So I'd say, "Hi, Tahirih, how are you doing today?" And you might say, "I'm doing great." And that would be an exchange. So the next thing, just to note about bit cover, another little unique piece to bit cover that's included in its definition, is that if you are playing a lead or principal role in a production, you cannot be asked to play a bit cover. So Hamlet is never going to play guard number 5 in another scene. There's no mechanism for that if you're a lead or a principal, you would never concurrently in that production also play a bit cover.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that? Let's say you have, say, a principal name on your contract, but it also says ensemble and cast by consent. Do those 2 terms allow you to step in for a bit cover?
Ooh, we're gonna get to cast by consent later in this. So I'm gonna let Jen talk about maximum number of roles first, because there are limits on how many understudy assignments you can be given on your contract under the agreement. And then after that, we're going to take a look at cast by consent.
Thanks, Margaret. Yeah, how many understudy assignments can you be given? That really depends on how you're contracted. So, as we can see in the slide, performing understudy can be asked to cover up to 4 roles per production, and up to a maximum of 5 roles per engagement. I think we have more to that slide, Randy. Ah, here we are. Swing. So the swing can be asked to cover up to 10 roles or tracks per production, with no more than 4 of those being principal tracks, up to a maximum of 14 roles per engagement. So we might ask, yes, I'm seeing something in the chat. What's the difference between a production and an engagement? So the production is the play, and the engagement is the contract. So you can be contracted to understudy or sorry, you can be contracted to work on more than one play on the same contract. So that's what that means. So per production, maximum of 4 for the performing understudy. For the swing, it's 10. And then per contract for the performing understudy, it's 8, 14 for the swing. So that's that. Next slide. We've got the standbys. So standbys, we've got, again, a maximum of 8 tracks per engagement. No more of those can be, no more of 4 of those can be principal tracks. So, and you'll see here, there's again, a reference to cast by consent, and Margaret's going to dig into that shortly. So the next slide, please. So the question might be, how do we determine what's a principal and what's an ensemble? Interestingly enough, or unhelpfully enough, as we can see in the definitions, we're back in the definitions article again, which is, as Margaret said, alphabetically arranged. There is no definition for principal. So the understudy provisions speak sort of in a binary way to either ensemble or principal. So if something doesn't meet the definition of ensemble, then we maintain that it's a principal role. So to determine that, we're going to now look at ensemble definition. So the ensemble is part of a group. It's a member of a group. It's not an individual. It's not distinct. However, next slide, please. They may speak lines, sing a solo, have solo dance, be a named character. However, all of that work that they do is incidental to the performance, and it's not substantially different from the rest of the ensemble. And I love, Margaret's got a great example of this that I'm going to steal, which is the dancing waiters. So we've got an ensemble of dancing waiters. One of those members of the ensemble keeps dropping their tray. They're the clumsy waiter. So they are a little different, but it's not substantially different from the work that the rest of the ensemble is doing. They're still part of the dancing waiters ensemble. So now we're back to the maximum number of roles. So there we go. That's how we figure out the difference between what is a principal track and what is an ensemble track. We reverse engineer it from the definition of ensemble. And I think the next slide. Great. And I think we're going to hand this one back over to Margaret to take over on cast by consent.
Thanks so much, Jen. Cast by consent. So cast by consent was formerly known as cast. And cast by consent, as we understand it now, is that a theater is going to do their best to assign all of the named lead and principal roles at the time of contracting. You should get your contract, and in general, you should know what your workload's going to look like. However, a director may have a concept about how they're going to use the actors for transitions, or how the actors are going to populate the world on stage. There also might be, 6 guards that each have one line. And they know that somebody's got to take those lines, but they don't know exactly who is going to play the 6 guards and have the one line. They have to kind of get in the room and see how that works out. So you might see on your contract that you're playing Romeo, Juliet, and cast by consent. And cast by consent really just signals to you that you might be asked to perform one of these smaller, non-speaking or unnamed roles. So if we move to the next slide, understudy assignments can also be cast by consent. So it is possible that you might see on your contract understudy cast by consent. And in that case, that's a signal to you that you, in the process of rehearsal, might be asked to understudy a cast by consent assignment, or potentially the actor that you are understudying may have cast by consent assignments that get worked into what their track is. And so then you, as the understudy, may be asked to take on those cast by consent assignments as well. So this has to be indicated at the time of contracting. Understudy cast by consent must be on your contract. And if you are working in repertory, as an example, it must be tied to a specific production. There cannot be a blanket understudy cast by consent on your contract that is attached to no production. So you need to know at minimum the production those cast by consent assignments are tied to. If you do have an understudy cast by consent assignment, then it's important that at some point you receive a rider to your contract that lists what all those little bits are, guard number 1 and this crowd scene and those 5 transitions, and you sign off on that, and that rider is filed with equity. And the business representatives, when we vet all of the contracts that come in, we take a look and see if someone's contract says cast by consent or says understudy cast by consent. And then we go and if we don't have a rider that says what you've agreed to, we do pursue those from the theater, because if they haven't given you that rider in the timeline that's required, which is either 14 days after the first public performance or 3 days following the official opening, whichever comes first, if you haven't gotten that rider, which clarifies those assignments, it actually triggers an additional payment for the theater not meeting that timeline. And that additional duties payment is found in Clause 1611. So Article 16 is all about fees. 1611 is specifically about additional duties. And that means that if you take something on that you didn't agree to at the time you were contracted, or in this case, if the cast by consent assignments came late, that would trigger the additional duties fee of $60 per week. So in addition to potentially receiving additional duties compensation, if you're assigned something after you're contracted, or if a cast by consent assignment isn't assigned to you in time, there are other things that you're entitled to as an understudy in order to get prepared to go on. And I'm going to ask Jen to speak to a couple of those for you.
Thanks, Margaret. So yes, in 3902, so we've got rehearsals and performances, line rehearsal and blocking rehearsal. You need to be prepared to go on. So you need to have adequate rehearsal. You're supposed to have adequate rehearsal, which means you get your line rehearsal, you get your blocking rehearsal, and a complete on-stage run through. The rest of that slide, please, Randy. If your track includes fights or intimacy, for which there was a fight director or intimacy director engaged for the production, then you're entitled to work with them or their delegate to have that to get that rehearsal as well. So you're entitled to your understudy fight rehearsal, your understudy intimacy rehearsal with either the director or their delegate, which would likely be the captain. And then, of course, clothes, makeup, and so on. You should never be asked to wear another artist's soiled costume, obviously. You should never be asked to wear ill-fitting shoes. Any wigs or facial hair appliances that you would be part of your track should be clean and properly fitted to you. So those are your entitlements under the agreement as well. I think that's everything for that slide. So I think back to Margaret.
Well, that's actually everything for all the slides. So it's now back to Tahirih to start sending Jen and myself some questions that have been coming through from you folks about these clauses, about what we've talked through today, and hopefully we can provide more clarification if there is anything you want to know about.
Yeah, there is a question in the chat. Does covering transitions you would normally not do, so moving set or furniture, count as performing a bit cover?
No, that would be considered a supplementary additional duty. So there is a certain period of, and we didn't get into all of the possibilities, but in the CTA, there are supplementary additional duties. And if you have to cover a set change or move a prop because someone is unavailable to do so, you can be temporarily asked to do that. I think it's up to 8 performances for no additional compensation. After that time, it essentially becomes a part of your track. And that's when the supplementary additional duties compensation would kick in.
I see a few more other questions popping into the chat. So in 3902B1, what is the definition of primary understudy track and secondary understudy track? So that's 3902B1.
So those aren't defined in the CTA. We see them as what the theater determines to be the first cover and the second cover. So we don't see it a lot outside of the festivals or commercial theater. But if you have 2 understudies who are both covering Simba, they will often designate one person as the first cover and one person as the second cover.
Okay, we have another question here. Are these more or less the same entitlements under the DOT policy? So are these CTA specific things, or do they also apply to the DOT policy?
These are specific to the CTA and the ITA.
Great, thank you. Are there definitions in the DOT policy for these?
That is not my area of expertise.
Okay.
So I am the theater agreements business representative manager. The DOT is one of our policies, and I would not want to misspeak on behalf of my colleague Ruth, who supervises those policies.
Gotcha. Okay, next, keep these questions coming. They're great. Here's another one. If the actor you're understudying leaves the show, are you automatically entitled to the role?
Jen, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I'll grab this one. No, you would not be entitled to the role because your contract is to understudy the role. So if that person were to leave, then the theater would have a choice to make. They could offer you to take the role, or they could offer the role to somebody else and keep you in your understudy contract. Sometimes it might be easier for them to keep you in your understudy contract, particularly if you're a swing and you're covering other things as well. It would be cause more upheaval to the show to move you into the track than just to engage a replacement. So no, that's the long answer to the short question. You're not entitled to the role.
Okay, thank you. Scrolling back up. Oh, lots of questions. This is great. Okay. I can work this better. So for swings standbys who have multiple covers, how do the hours of rehearsal break down? Is that in relation to, can I just ask a follow-up question, Heather? Is that in relation to, like, for a swing standby so you're asking that has multiple covers on a show, is there a minimum requirement of rehearsal hours that should be allotted to you to get those line runs done and get those on-stage run-throughs? Is that what you're asking there? Or, like, if you have 4 standbys, do you get 4 understudy runs? Maybe I'm just elaborating on that question, but yes, exactly. That's what Heather followed up with.
So there aren't currently any minimum rehearsal hours under the CTA. So you have the requirements. So the theater is obligated to make sure you get that line run. Make sure you get that complete on-stage rehearsal. Make sure that you work with the fighter intimacy director or fighter intimacy captain if that's a part of your understudy assignment. So however many hours it takes them to schedule that, that is somewhat within their purview, as provided they meet those obligations to get you prepared.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that? So let's
Go
say
for it.
someone is covering 4 different principal tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Does a Frankenstein version of an understudy run count if the actor feels like that has fulfilled their needs to feel confident in having to go on? Or
Mm-hmm.
does that mean they need to articulate to either the stage manager or the company saying, actually, I don't feel adequately prepared.
Mm-hmm.
Is there more time?
Yeah, I think they would need to articulate that to theater or company management. There's nothing that prevents sort of a a complete onstage run through, or maybe you perform a couple of your different assignments, provided that is feasible within that run through. But if we have perceived risk in the CTA, if you're not feeling well prepared, if you're feeling unsafe, like I'm not sure how that quick change is going to go, or I'm a little nervous about this transition, then you do need to advocate for yourself and talk to stage management and say, yeah, I need some more time here.
Are those some things that can be done, say, as in emergency rehearsals or like pre-half-hour call to kind of work those little moments that you're like, those are my key targets that need to get addressed? Maybe there's not a
Yeah.
full other rehearsal or on stage run.
Yeah, there's allowable rehearsal hours in any performance week, and it's certainly within your rights to say, hey, can I get a little bit of time? We've got 8 hours this week. Or if it's a fighter intimacy moment, those can be scheduled before the half. Or you can look at emergency rehearsal is always tricky, but yes, it does count as an onstage rehearsal in the event of an emergency if you're going on. So it is an option that's available.
Great. If there are any other follow-up questions to those, please drop those in the chat. I think there was one that says, I've had cast members engage as a second cover. I think you've already answered that, perhaps, about what it means to be a second cover. Like the first cover for an understudy assignment, and then there's a second cover is potentially the second person that might get assigned to go on.
Mm-hmm. That's why there's that difference in the timelines to put someone in. And again, we really typically only see secondary and tertiary covers triggered at the festivals or in commercial theater. So there's those primary cover timelines when you have to get the first covers rehearsed in, and then it's a longer timeline to rehearse in the secondary and tertiary covers.
Gotcha.
Often indicating it's a longer running show.
Yes. Okay, here's another one. Would moving furniture also count as cast by consent? Is that also, or is that part of, like...
That's more of a supplementary additional duty. Yeah, if it's not part of your track.
Right, yeah, if it's in addition to, because there's a domino effect and you're filling in. I just saw never mind. Thanks, Kat. Okay, question. What constitutes a line rehearsal in a sung-through musical?
I mean, I guess that would be your sitz probe, right? You get an opportunity to sing through all your material.
Yes, yeah, but not necessarily with the whole band.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
It might be with a piano.
Great. Someone said, oh yes, so in regards to the DOT policy question, if these terms cover the same thing, apparently there will be a policy panel in June, so do keep an eye out for that.
Excellent.
Another question here. I think there should be restrictions comment on how many hours of rehearsal swings can be used for up on their feet. Asking someone to cover up to 10, was at the max, 10 tracks when they are being used in rehearsal nearly constantly seems unreasonable.
So that sounds like a comment to email to the agreements at caea.com. As I sort of said at the beginning, this session is about what currently exists. So if you really feel strongly that something needs to change, then the form for that is to send that to us. We'll add it to the matrix to review with our negotiating team in the fall.
Great, thanks, Margaret. here we go. Another question. So when you say line run and blocking rehearsal resulting in a complete onstage run through, does this mean one run through is sufficient? Also, are there stipulations for the run throughs, including tech or not? So when you say line run and blocking rehearsal resulting in it, so the combination of those two things don't equal a complete onstage run. What we're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, Margaret, is that a line run occurs, a blocking rehearsal occurs, whether it's on stage or not on stage, and then a complete on stage run through with tech occurs.
We've always interpreted it to be it's got to be, you have to be given the opportunity to perform your track. You need to know what the lights are going to look like. You need to understand the backstage movement, any changes, quick changes, prop movement. Otherwise, it's not necessarily, you're not going to feel safe, right? You have to have had that opportunity to almost do a dress run of that role.
Great, thank you. Watch. Equity says, watch for the invite coming this week. I think that's the dot panel. Here's another question we have. These are great questions, everyone. Thank you so much. Can a contract offer be contingent on acceptance of cast by consent rider? Looking at interpreting of the word consent, i.e., can you say no and still expect to have the offer given?
I think there's a difference between accepting a contract where it lists cast by consent, either as an assignment or an understudy assignment, and then the mechanism to accept or decline what that assignment is. Is that what I'm understanding correctly? Like in the moment, in the process, if what that cast by consent assignment is not something that you feel you can consent to, can you say no? Is that what you're asking? Yes, yes.
Okay,
So
great,
yeah,
thanks.
so yes. I mean, if you sign a contract that says understudy cast by consent, there is still a mechanism in the agreement whereby you consent to that assignment. So it's worth noting that you can't turn something down because of its size or because it doesn't interest you. But there does need to be a conversation about accepting those assignments in the room.
Great, thank you. Okay, scrolling down. Oh, here we go. If the swing moves into one of the roles they are covering for an extension week, do they just need a rider to specify? Do they now get paid per performance, or is it just considered part of their contract? So a planned swing moving into a role that they understudy or swing on for in an extension week. So do they need just a rider to specify that change is officially occurring? And I guess this depends on probably what it says in their contract. Do they now get paid per performance, or is it just considered part of their contract?
If they become the replacement actor for the role, then they become the replacement actor for the role, and they're not paid per performance. They are replacing the actor. So they continue to get their 112% per week, but there's no bump associated with that. They're replacing the actor.
And a follow-up question on my end, are they obligated, or they still have the obligation to cover their other swing tracks, let's say if they have to go on and create a Frankenstein?
Potentially, it would have to be. It would just depend on what that contract looks like, potentially, if that's feasible.
I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
Okay, next question here. Oh, mourning the loss of the phrase Lord and Lady as caster, Lord and Lady cast by consent, just isn't as funny. Okay, gotcha. Okay, two questions here. These were dropped in the Q&A part, I think. So I find the entitlements confusing. A blocking rehearsal is not the same thing as a run through. And just double checking, is the blocking run different than the onstage run? I think maybe we've answered that one already now.
And do you want to maybe try it again and see if it
sure. So we're talking about three different components. So we've got the line run, which we've clarified what that is. The blocking rehearsal could happen anywhere. It could happen in the hall, it could happen on the stage, but it would be blocking you through. And then the onstage rehearsal we maintain is with tech for safety purposes. So that onstage run through would be your tech run, cue to cue, however it Frankenstein, however it is that it is difficult. It's challenging to make these words apply to every iteration of every kind of production and understudy eventuality. So yes, it's those three things. So you get your line run, your blocking, and then your run through whatever that might be with tech. Does that help?
I think so. But if there are further questions to that, please drop that in the chat and I'll try to get to it. Okay, another question here. So this is a good one. What type of materials are acceptable for the theater to make available to understudies and swings, i.e. rehearsal videos, archival videos, stage manager notes, etc.?
Scripts and scores. And then if the theater has made recordings for the declared use of reference and access, it's one of the declared uses in the CTA, those can be provided to understudies, but not until they have had their complete onstage run through. It is for them to reference and maintain the tracks, but the artist has to have the opportunity to learn it and make it their own and not learn it from a video.
It's not meant as a shortcut to adequate rehearsal time.
I would
Is that
follow. I have strong feelings, but I don't know if I'll voice that. Just knowing how little time I feel like actually is afforded to
yeah,
understudies.
it's a problem for sure, Tahirih. And we would like to see theater schedule more rehearsal time instead of providing opportunities where they don't. But I'm sure it's going to be a big conversation at the next round of negotiations.
Thank you for that. Okay, as an SM, here's another question. As an SM, I've had an actor debate that culminating in a complete run-through rehearsal on stage must be completed within 14 days. Suggests something other than a line run before being on stage. So, i.e., some amount of work is culminating. This is mostly answered by saying the obligation is the line run and the on-stage run. I think I understand that. Does that make sense, Margaret?
Not really.
Okay, so I think they're saying, and please correct me if I'm wrong in interpreting this, Michael. So before an actor has debated the fact that the phrase culminating in a complete run-through rehearsal on stage must be completed within 14 days, that suggests something other than a line run before being on stage. So that the fact that there does need to be a line run before being on stage. Am I interpreting that? I.e., some amount of work is culminating. Yes, you've raised your hand. Let's ask you to speak. If someone can unmute or let Michael speak.
Yeah, hello. No, I think now that you've said it very clearly, there's a line run, there's a blocking rehearsal somewhere, whether that's on stage or not, and then there's the on stage run, that there's 3 steps is very clear, and that the second and third step aren't meant to be combined is great.
Gotcha. Okay. Glad that answered your question. Okay, let's see. Scrolling down, does blocking, oh, here we go. Here's another question. Does blocking include choreography? Is this rehearsal a teaching moment or a practice moment? So does that mean there's someone there, like an assistant choreographer, an assistant director, who's maybe been tasked with helping in the understudy rehearsals?
Yeah, understudy rehearsals are meant to be led by someone. So it can be stage management, but you would assume in a musical that you would have either the choreographer or the assistant choreographer or assistant director available as well. If the understudies haven't had the opportunity to learn that choreography in rehearsal, then yes, absolutely, their blocking rehearsal should include the choreography that they're expected to know.
Let's say that there isn't a third body, but just SM, and there's choreography that you haven't learned, and let's say that declared use of reference footage from rehearsal, one could reference like a choreography video in order to learn that choreography in that moment.
Yeah, but typically, particularly if it's a musical, there would be a dance captain. So there should be somebody on contract who's charged with maintaining that choreography and teaching that choreography in the choreographer's absence.
Does that answer your question, Heather, I think? Great. I think I see a follow-up question from Heather at the bottom, so I'm going to jump to that actually. And she says, what if all those people have left after opening? So I guess
the dance
maybe
captain
only
is
the
always an actor in the show.
Yeah. So you have the dance captain, right?
Yeah. You have the dance captain, you have the stage manager.
Great. Scrolling back up.
I can elaborate a little bit while you're scrolling, Tahirih.
Yep.
I'm looking at 6209 Dance Captain B responsibilities, and it actually lists in the responsibilities for the dance captain to maintain, obviously, but leading cleanup rehearsals, providing notes, and consulting casting replacement, rehearse blocking or spacing changes, maintaining choreography. So yes, I think that in the case where you don't have an assistant that stays with that's on the show, then the dance captain could quite easily take over with putting in those understudy dances.
Great. Yeah, I'll just add that follow-up comment from Heather. It does, and that just the reality of hours, which there honestly is always a lack of, which you've mentioned is something to be talked about in negotiations. Thanks for answering. Thanks, Heather. Jumping back up, where did I leave off? Oh, here we go. Can you speak about emergency understudies? Is there a max amount of weeks you can be hired for before they can get you a costume? Is there a max amount of weeks you can be hired for before they can get you a costume? So is that saying, someone came in as an emergency understudy and there wasn't necessarily an understudy set of costume? Is there a timeline for when that has to be instituted?
I think if I understand correctly, are you asking how long do you have to be assigned the role before you can be asked to perform it?
I think if I'm reading this correctly, so let's say an emergency understudy has been brought in onto a production.
Yeah.
So is there a max amount of weeks you can be hired for before they get you a costume? So it sounds like maybe the emergency understudy was brought on, but they just didn't have that costume yet. So I guess what is the allowable window to not have a costume? I'm not sure if I'm understanding that correctly.
I mean, in an emergency, like if someone's brought in as an emergency replacement, the agreement doesn't really speak to wardrobe for that person. Other understudy assignments, there are, if you look at 3902C, so if you're a swing or a standby, if you have the role for only a week, you can be required to read it, but not do a full performance. And that if you're a performing understudy, you have to have the assignment for at least 2 weeks before you can be asked to perform it.
Okay, got you. Thank you.
But in an emergency, it doesn't really speak to wardrobe.
Right. And I think it's an emergency, so it will come when it comes.
Yeah, something will happen. You'll wear something.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. So there are 2 levels to the consent. One in the initial contract, you consent to the concept of additional casting, and another when the casting is specific. So i.e., once cast, an actor may find the addition of additional roles / responsibilities to be overwhelming or above their comfort level. And so I think we're talking in relation to the cast by consent.
Cast by consent.
Yeah.
And it's at that point that there's the mechanism in the agreement to open up that conversation with the theater. that if when the assignments present themselves, if it's too much or it's something that just does not gel with your own personal identity, that's where you can have that conversation with the theater, bring the stage management or the liaison with you and say, you know what, I'm not able to consent to this, and this is why.
Great, thank you. Oh, here's another one. But what if, so I think this is back to video references, but what if there's adequate time and everyone else is being provided videos as reference? That seems unreasonable as everyone has different learning strategies. And yes, I will send my comment to the agreements email. Is B, that's in relation to the previous comment, usage of different types of video learning and what can be used. I think I just want to clarify which part seems unreasonable, but I think you're mentioning in regards to the limits on usage of what can be used as video reference. But everyone does have different learning strategies, and video can be very helpful for different things. So yes, please send in your comments via the agreements email. Another one here, understudy track. So when an understudy track also is required to understudy an instrument track, different from their regular instrument track, is there anything in the CTA to require adequate music run-throughs? So let's say you're playing piano in something, but you understudy something, or someone that plays guitar. Is there any minimum, I guess, music rehearsal requirements?
It's the same preconditions to perform for any other understudy assignment. So if you know that your understudy assignment includes playing the guitar, then you would need to ensure, the theater's going to have to ensure that you're ready to do that. So that either you already know how to play the guitar or that you're provided with, with sufficient rehearsal to cover that track.
Yes. Sufficient rehearsal feels never sufficient. A lot of time on one's own time seems to go in for a lot of understudy work. Okay. Oh, we already answered this for Heather. Who is required?
Tahirih, if I can just,
yeah.
that comment that you just made, I think is really interesting, because I think that that's sort of the argument, or part of the argument against the recordings. In a way, it's we want there to be pressure for the theater to schedule rehearsal so that people get to actually do the work in the space and learn it in their bodies in the space, rather than to be doing all of that work on their own time with a video. So I think that that's where equities pressure would come from, understanding, of course, that people do have different learning styles, and we look forward to hearing about what the needs are, for sure.
Of course. Thank you for that, Jennifer. Where did I leave off in this chat? So many great questions. Oh yes, great, Anna. Who is required to be at the understudy on-stage run-through, principal actors, ensemble? Oh, that's a great question. And I can just add a little tidbit myself, because we just had our understudy run through last week for our show. And we had a hybrid on stage of people in their primary tracks and people doing their ensemble and swing tracks. And I'm curious, as an actor, I'm more than happy to be there in support of my fellow understudies to help them get a full run at whatever they need on stage. But I actually don't know if there are actual requirements in the CTA that way. So that's a good question.
Aren't. Yeah, there aren't, but it is whoever needs to be there. If you need a scene partner, you need the other folks in the ensemble to get your spacing right. Like, it is who needs to be there so that you get your complete on-stage run through with tech, with costumes, with spacing, with your backstage movement. So there may be times that not every principal actor needs to be there because they're working in this set of 5 principals with, this set of 5 understudies, but it is who needs to be there to make sure that the understudy gets that complete run through, that they're not acting across a blank wall, right?
And that's essentially the stage manager's call to help design that, right? To
Yeah.
help ensure that they have that ability to not have too many gaps or holes on stage.
Yeah, exactly.
Great question, Anna. If a show opens 2 days after the first public performance, is the production really bound to begin understudy work on the day of opening, or do theaters regularly get concessions? So let me just read that again. If a show opens 2 days after the first public performance, so we've had 2 previews or 1 preview, is the production really bound to begin understudy work on the day of opening, or do theaters regularly get concessions?
Some things we sometimes see a concession for, but that is the language in the agreement. That is what it says, that you should begin understudy rehearsals 2 days following the first public performance.
Right. So that's the latest time to start. You can start your line run before that point, or you can have already had your blocking.
You can start much earlier and probably should, but that is the drop dead date.
Right. Okay. What happens when an understudy on stage rehearsal isn't completed because we've run out of time? Is a theater required to keep scheduling these rehearsals until all of the tracks have completed a full on-stage understudy rehearsal?
I'm not sure. Is it like they do a run of the show, but it's cut short, or?
Let me just read that one more time. So when an understudy on-stage rehearsal, so it doesn't sound like it's the run-through, it's the on-stage rehearsal, isn't completed because we've run out of time. So, they've just run out of time. They haven't gotten through everything. Is a theater required to keep scheduling these rehearsals until all the tracks have completed a full on-stage understudy rehearsal?
I think what I'm hearing is, does it need to be contiguous, like the whole thing run in one go? Or can they, if they don't get through it, can they pick up where they left off? Or do they need to start back at 1? Is that the question?
Is my mic working? Can people hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, hi. Okay.
Hi.
So the situation is essentially we've started our onstage understudy rehearsal, but we're only allotted 4 hours to complete maybe all 3 of our tracks, maybe 2 of our tracks, but we've run out of time. So there has been situations where folks just don't get to practice their last track, just because the theater is like, well, this is the only amount of time that you have to run it. And if you can't complete it in this time, then that's it. So I guess my question is like, should the theaters be just keep scheduling these rehearsals until we can actually go through all of our tracks and actually finish them?
Are you talking about during your after opening, your allowable rehearsals that you get every week? They don't want to continue scheduling the understudy rehearsals during that allowable weekly rehearsal? Is that?
Yeah, I guess I've been in a situation where we get 2 4-hour days and we have to complete it all in that time. And then sometimes we don't complete it all. So then we feel as actors like, well, I guess we'll just wing it then.
They would have to continue the following week using their allowable rehearsal hours until you've gotten what I'm hearing is that they only want to use 1 allowable week of rehearsal hours to put in to make sure that the understudies have their on-stage rehearsal. Well, that's obviously, no, you're completely right. They should continue to schedule that understudy rehearsal until it's been done, and you've got that allowable rehearsal. What are they doing with that allowable rehearsal hours? Are they just choosing not to call people, or are they calling in the people in the roles to do brush up work? Or
honestly, even hearing you talk about it, I didn't even know that we were allowed more rehearsals as understudies. So that's just something that wasn't communicated to us. It was essentially like, this is the time you have and that's it. So that's good to know that I can ask for more. Thank you.
Can I ask
You're welcome.
A follow-up comment or question on the design of that? Is it the requirement because of safety, the need to have full on-stage tech rehearsal for each of those understudy assignments, or like, you know, creating that hit list of like, here are the key moments of these different parts of these multiple tracks I'm covering? Or can some of that work be done in like non-tech rehearsal time that gets scheduled? Like, let's say you've already had your on-stage tech run, but I'm sure that's very expensive for theaters to keep doing on-stage tech runs to cover, unless it's already like, you know, first cover, second cover, they have to keep doing that. Is that like a reason why it can be difficult to keep scheduling those things?
I would assume that the crew cost is a deterrent. Yeah. But you're entitled to that complete onstage run through. And if you didn't get it, you have to ask for it. Or talk to your liaison, have your liaison call us, and we'll ask for it.
And to be clear, that crew cost is part of the planning of the production and part of the budgeting of the production. So that responsibility does lie with the theater. We recognize that there are costs and that there are also things that happen, but ultimately it can't be carried on the shoulders of the artists all the time.
Thanks. Yeah, it feels like there's bigger conversations to be had on a lot of those topics there. Okay, next question. Complete run-through rehearsal on stage. Can this obligation be fulfilled over different calls? So example, Act 1 on one day, then Act 2 on another.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And then does the blocking rehearsal include the full cast or just understudies, swings, standbys?
I mean, the agreement doesn't speak to that, so I think it could just be understudies.
Again, it's hard to be prescriptive when you're talking about creative work and so many different types of creative work and permutations and iterations and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So again, kind of left to the design and conversation between the understudies and the stage manager.
Yeah.
Okay, next one. Our swing was also our dance captain, and by the time we got to understudy rehearsals, we did a full day of rehearsal, and then they said they did not want to do a full run through on a future day and would rather just do more piecemeal scene rehearsals. So we did that. Was that okay? I figured whatever they wanted and felt was most helpful to them was the way to go.
I mean, you're supposed to have a complete on-stage run through, but you know, if that was sufficient for everyone to feel safe and like they had the opportunity to run their tracks and they felt good and prepared, then that's good, right?
Yep. Oh, B, I see your comment here, and it probably was in response to an earlier thing. So if I've missed it, let me know, but I think maybe we've already addressed that. Here's one under 3902C. There's a question. So preconditions to perform. The clause refers to performing understudies, but does it also apply to swings? If a swing has the assignment for more than 2 weeks, can they also be asked to perform with appropriate emergency rehearsal? Let me just read that again. So under 3902C, preconditions to perform, the clause refers to performing understudies, but does that clause also apply to swings? So if a swing has the assignment for more than 2 weeks, can they also be asked to perform?
I can see this. It actually, the clause starts with if the artist has been contracted as a standby or swing to understudy a role for 1 week or less, the artist will not be required to perform it, but may read it in performance. So it begins with that, and then it goes on to talk about the conditions for performing understudies. Does that help?
Hi, Jennifer.
Oh, great. Hi, Jessica. Thanks.
I think my it's just disambiguating that clause for me because it does say yes, contracted as standby or swing to understudy a role for 1 week or less. And then the second part of that is what happens more than 1 week, if you've had it for more than 1 week, 2 weeks or more, but it only refers to performing understudies. It doesn't refer to swings or standbys. So my question is, which of those clauses apply to all understudies of every flavor?
I see what you mean. So if so 1 week or less won't be required to perform it as a standby or swing. But then what happens if the standby or swing has been contracted for more than 1 week?
Exactly. Is it the same expectation as a performing understudy? And if not, I'm going to put this in the agreements email because that seems like it has a different path for performing understudies than for swings and standbys.
I would, this is interesting because this is a little peek behind the curtain. What I would do here is I would say this is an interpretation question. And then I would say, I think that the performing understudy provisions would apply in this case. And what I would do is I would consult with Margaret and say, what's your interpretation? And so clearly this clause needs some finessing and some clarification. So we need to make a note in the matrix. And Margaret, your
Yeah.
interpretation?
We actually believe it or not, Jessica, I don't know if you remember that we clarified this language, LOL, at the last round of
I
negotiation.
do remember. I'm beating a drum here for sure of like, let's disambiguate all the language we can so that everybody reading this clause doesn't have to call you.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think the assumption actually is that a standby or swing, if they've had the assignment for more than a week, could be required to perform it. Whereas a
Yes.
performing understudy needs to have had it for at least 2 weeks. And I think the rationale is that the standby or swing does not additionally have their own regular on-stage track, so could be learning that role in rehearsal during that week.
100%. Completely agree. Would love to see it in the language.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
We will
you.
add it.
Great. I think maybe that gets us through all of the questions so far. I love the combos going on here, being Heather, and just the reality that there is no way to get through all swing understudy tracks in one 4-hour call, as we know.
No.
I think, yeah, great. I think that's gotten us through in most of the questions. I just want to double check that if there were any other questions, if anyone wanted to unmute to ask them, or anything else that you want to drop in the chat, or Margaret or Jennifer, if there's anything else that pops into mind from all the questions that we've had so far.
I think just to say that this is, I really appreciate that so many people have come today and that it's been such an active dialogue and so many questions have been asked. It's fantastic. For those of you who also participated in the Understudies survey, thank you so much. We had a huge response to it. Randy can pop the exact number in the chat, but I think it was like over 700 people responded to the Understudies survey, which is just 723, which is just amazing feedback for us. And we're going to be distilling all of that information about what folks' experiences have been as understudies so that we can really make some thoughtful proposals when we meet with PACT in 2027. So thank you very much. And I hear I should probably attend it too. There's going to be some information coming from our dot policy team in June, which is great.
Awesome, thank you. And in the chat, any suggestions for our next clause in effect? Please let Equity know. They want to hear from you as to what you'd like to learn more about within the agreements. Thank you for all those comments, everyone. And is there a schedule for future chats like this? That's a good question. Brandy or Margaret or Jen, does anyone know when our next one potentially might be?
Yeah, I think the next one, as Randy mentioned in June, is going to be about some of our policies that we have. And, if they continue being a success, we're going to continue to hold them. This was a little bit of an experiment. It was, an idea that was brought forward by one of our national counselors. And so we thought, okay, let's give it a whirl and see if people show up. But, since there seems to be such great uptake, then we'll keep doing them for sure. Happy to.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, I guess I think we've answered all the questions. Thank you everyone for engaging and for being here today. Again, thank you, Margaret and Jen. It was a very wonderful presentation and discussion with a lot of information. I know our members will be glad to reference this recording of this presentation, and that will be shared on the Equity website in the next coming days. And thank you again to all the members who took the time to attend. And again, if you have missed any of the previous workshops, you can always check them out on the Equity YouTube channel. And I think maybe we're going to end things a little bit early. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Hope you enjoy the rest of your Monday.
Thanks so much.